Black child parents. The new factor in Black genocide. The levels of collective self-consciousness and self-respect that a people carry can be determined accurately by the standard of care and development it demands for all of its young, the future of the people. It is virtually impossible, in the final quarter of the 20th century, for 99.9% of Black teenage male and female persons to raise children who will be emotionally strong, stable, and capable of functioning effectively under the stress of a racist society. The very dynamic that produces the pathological situation wherein children attempt to have and rear children is designed to ensure Black functional inferiority. Yet, 25% of all Black children born today in the U.S. are born to Black teenagers. This means that, at the very least, 25% of all Black children will suffer in terms of their development and will be impaired in their potential to function effectively under the stress of racism. I refer to the failure to ensure the maximal development of the genetic potential of all Black children, as well as the ultimate waste of this genetic potential, as Black genocide. During the American slave era, Black teenage females were forced to breed baby after baby, and were prevented from actively caring for the development of these slave babies. There was no concern for these human beings reaching maximal levels of their genetic potential. This lack of concern for the development of these young human beings was enforced by racist slave masters and slave mistresses. Today, just as in the slave society, Black teenage girls are caught up in a similar destructive dynamic, producing human beings who subsequently are subjected to low-level development and treated in inhuman ways. The more complex a social system becomes, the higher the level of emotional maturity and formal education needed to negotiate that system successfully. Often, the ultimate level of functioning reached by children is correlated with the level of emotional maturity achieved by the parent prior to the birth of the child. In brief, emotionally immature and poorly educated parents raise children who are more likely to fail than children of emotionally mature and well-educated parents. Although income is an important factor, it is a less important factor than emotional maturity in successfully rearing a child, particularly a non-white child living under the conditions of white supremacy. The following comments have been made to me by Black teenagers who either already have become parents or are contemplating becoming parents. 1. Dr. Welsing, I'm 16, I know I'm grown. 2. Dr. Welsing, I'm going to have my baby. Nobody's going to take my baby from me. I'm not going to let those doctors kill my baby. I'm not going to have no abortion. 3. Dr. Welsing, all of my friends have babies. I want something of my own too. I'm not going to have an abortion. I'm going to love my baby. 4. Dr. Welsing, my baby's going to love me. I want somebody to love me. My mother and father don't love me. Nobody loves me. My parents act like teenagers. They don't know what they are doing. 5. Dr. Welsing, I know I can take care of a baby. 6. No, Dr. Welsing, my boyfriend doesn't have any job, but he's going to take care of me and my baby. He says he can. He's 17. He's going to get us an apartment. No, we didn't finish school. We don't go to school anymore. I mean, we go, but we don't go to no classes. 7. Dr. Welsing, if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have no baby when I'm young. I just didn't know no better. 8. Dr. Welsing, my boyfriend, he's gone. I thought he wanted the baby too. 9. Dr. Welsing, I'm 19. My boyfriend, he's 19. He gets mad at my baby. It's our baby. When he cries, he hit the baby one time. Sometimes I feel like hitting the baby too. 10. Dr. Welsing, I just didn't know how to be no father. I never had my own father at home. 11. Dr. Welsing, my girlfriend can take care of that baby by herself with the welfare. 12. Dr. Welsing, my mother had me when she was 15. I don't see why she's telling me I don't want my baby. I don't see why I can't do what she did. All of the above statements have been made by teenage children. These are not unusual statements. Teachers, social workers, doctors, and counselors working with young people have heard similar comments as they talk to Black teenagers in the U.S., where the incidence of Black children parenting children has reached epidemic proportions. Elaborate programs are being established to counsel teenage parents, special education and prenatal, obstetric and gynecological programs are being established to assist the child mothers. Classes on nutrition are being organized, courses on sex, anatomy, and physiology are given. And, while all this is happening, no one is raising the most critical question. Can Black children be effective mothers and fathers too? Persons who must function in a highly complex technological society that is extremely racist and oppressive to Black and other non-white peoples? Another critical question that has not been answered is, why are so many teenage children engaging in this high degree of sexual activity and producing children for whom they are unable to provide sufficient care? Is there an underlying social dynamic that is forcing on children this pattern of destructive behavior that borders on homicide, most certainly emotional and psychological homicide? If so, what is it? What are the implications for future generations if this pattern of behavior continues? Are we prepared to reap the whirlwind? In my clinical view, having functioned as a psychiatrist for adults and children for the past decade, I have found that there is an absolute difference between simply having a child and possessing the developed concrete ability to socialize a new human being for high-level functioning in a complex social system. Based upon my experience in the private practice of adult and child psychiatry, as a psychiatrist in public mental health centers, and as a psychiatric consultant in the system of welfare services to families and children in a large metropolitan area, I believe it is impossible in the late 20th century for a Black teenager to be an adequate parent. Further, if Black people are ever to evolutionize their situation from oppression to justice and liberation, they will have to shift their present patterns of behavior radically such that marriage will not be considered before the age of 30. In keeping with this approach, childbearing should not be considered before the age of 32 to 35. This will provide both parents sufficient opportunity to maximize levels of emotional maturity and to work to overcome deficits experienced in emotional development during their own early years. There is an African proverb that states, "The hand that rocks the cradle rules the nation." I will paraphrase it. The level of emotional maturity in the hand that rocks the cradle determines the fate of the nation. A people on their sojourn through time are somewhat like a ship on the ocean. If many people aboard the ship have extensive knowledge of the sea and navigation, that ship will have an excellent chance of reaching the desired destination. On the other hand, when the people aboard a ship lack knowledge of the sea and navigation, more than likely the ship, should the sea become at all rough, will flounder into destruction. Black people in the U.S. are in a parallel condition. The critical decisions that Black people make now about Black children becoming the parents of other Black children will determine whether the ship reaches its destination intact or flounders off course and sinks, bringing almost certain death to all. If present conditions persist, history will record that Black people living in the U.S. failed to survive the 20th century AD. This failure will occur, not simply because they were a captured and oppressed people, but because they permitted themselves to become a blind people without any social vision or understanding. History may record that Black elders, fathers, and mothers had no vision, and therefore the Black children became stupid, thinking that they could nurture something as precious as the life of a new human being. As a result of all this, Black people perished. In the Old Testament of the Bible, the prophet Isaiah says, "Where there is no vision, the people will perish." Vision means the ability to understand the present in its totality and to organize one's behavior in the present to meet successfully the challenge of circumstance, present and future. A people that does not understand, and thus fails to teach each generation that potential mothers and fathers must be able to carry out certain basic functions in relationships with their children, is a people without vision. A people amongst whom just anyone produces a child, at any time, without any serious thought or consideration, without any group-recognized standard for parenthood, is a people on the brink of disaster. Black people in the U.S. are at such a crisis point. Many Black people's understanding of the roles of mother and father is limited to the view of mothers as females who simply give birth to children and fathers as males who simply impregnate women. The act of creating new life is taken so lightly that school children sing and joke about it, being provided such songs by their elders. Record companies make millions of dollars playing cheap songs about what fun it is to bring a child into the world, when this should be the most highly respected exchange between a man and a woman. Yet for us as a people, the definition of a parent is becoming limited to a person who has participated in producing an offspring, even though many of these persons are unprepared to participate fully in the development of those offspring. In effect, no real progress has been made from the time when we formerly were considered as breeders of human beings who were viewed as having no true human worth, merely things to be used and misused. Thus, a Black mother can be a 10, 12, or 16-year-old female, A black father can then be a 13, 14, or 15-year-old male. The following statistics are reflective of the extent to which these limited definitions are operative amongst large numbers of blacks. Teenage mothers account for about half of the out-of-wedlock children born to both blacks and whites in 1976. Approximately 25% of all black children are being born to teenage mothers. Virtually all unwed teenage mothers keep their babies. 25% of teenage mothers get pregnant again within a year after their first baby and 15% within the second year. This tendency of repetition condemns many girls to a life of poverty, poor education, and welfare. In all too many cases, teenage mothers do not finish high school, and they find it more difficult to get jobs. Their children also are condemned to lives of poverty and stress. Teenage motherhood presents many serious complications. Large numbers of these teenage mothers are poor and ignorant of medical needs. They do not receive adequate prenatal medical care or nutrition. Those girls in their early teens who become mothers are not physically fully developed, and, therefore, they are less able to bear the physical strains of having a baby. According to recent figures from the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, teenage mothers have higher death rates, more anemia, more toxemia, more hemorrhage, and lower weight babies than women in their 20s. Also, the babies of teenage mothers are more likely to be born with birth defects than those of women in their 20s. The above statistics must be viewed in the context of what is happening to black children, irrespective of the age of their mothers. For example, more than half of the black children born in the U.S. during 1976 were born to unmarried women, according to a new report by the National Center for Health Statistics. Just 13 years ago, 26% of all black children were born to unmarried women. Today, 40% of all black children live in families headed by women, compared to about 12% for white children. 6 years ago, the figure for blacks was 30%. Female-headed households now have become the new poverty group in the U.S. At most 33% of all black children now receive benefits from aid to families with dependent children. Another indicator of the magnitude of the problem facing black people is reflected in the facts that follow. The District of Columbia has a higher percentage of black citizens than any other major political unit in America. It has a black mayor and a city council that is predominantly black. It has the highest percentage of educated black people of any city in the world. It has a university that is referred to by some as the capstone of black education. And it has the major black medical center and black college of medicine in the world. It has all of the highest level elected black officials in all of the U.S. working every day. Yet this same city has the highest rate of infant mortality of any state in the country. Even the state of Mississippi has a lower rate of infant mortality. Further, there is a wide disparity in Washington, D.C. between black and white infant mortality. 27.7 black babies die for every 1,000 born, while there are only 7.5 white infant deaths per 1,000 births. This high number of infant deaths is not caused by teenage pregnancies alone. However, they do contribute. The point of this discussion about teenage parenthood is not to imply that teenage people engaging in sexual activity are dirty or immoral, or that sex is dirty or immoral. This discussion is concerned with questioning whether black children are capable of fully understanding and carrying forth effective parenthood. Particularly, are black children prepared to function together as mothers and fathers under the conditions of racism, which is exceedingly complex and creates high-level stress for non-white people? Greater insight into this question is provided by the following conclusions. 1. Examining numerous case histories of current black teenage parents, I have noted one major common denominator: a great percentage of the mothers. Of the current teenage mothers were themselves teenagers when their first children were born, just as their own mothers were teenagers when they were born. In other words, the prior generations consisted of child parents. Many believe that parenthood, when it occurs in childhood, causes the child mother to achieve emotional maturity rapidly. In actuality, the child mother's emotional development stops progressing when she becomes responsible for another life. It may not resume until the child mother is relieved of all responsibility for parenting and can continue her own maturation with the guidance and support of mature adults outside of the family circle. If this burden is not removed, there even may be emotional regression due to the overwhelming sense of frustration brought on by the responsibility and stress for which the child parent is unprepared. The child parent may begin to act more immature than she did prior to the delivery. Any level of responsibility towards the newborn then becomes too great for the child parent to handle. Some child parents show a very short period of seeming responsibility towards the newborn child, only to collapse after 6 to 12 months of imposed responsibility. Many of these child mothers begin to develop resentment, anger, and hatred towards their children. The children are aware of these negative feelings, although they are unable to articulate their experiences of emotional rejection and deprivation. The impact of this rejection and deprivation soon is displayed in the children's disturbed behavioral patterns, particularly in the school setting, where attention and behavioral controls are required. Eating problems, extreme temper tantrums, stubbornness, excessive activity, and excessive crying may manifest before these children reach the age of school attendance. This vicious cycle begins when the mothers, due to their own lack of emotional maturity, fail to meet the dependency and emotional demands of their newborn children. In 10 to 14 years, the new emotionally starved children begin to act out sexually, attempting to have these long-standing dependency needs met via sexual intercourse. If it is a female child, very shortly thereafter she becomes pregnant. She blindly believes she needs and wants a baby to satisfy her needs. As a result, another generation of emotional starvation is set in motion. Another generation is prevented from achieving emotional growth and maturity. Often, the emotionally starved male child turns to drugs, frequently heroin. The penis in the vagina for the female child and the heroin needle in the vein of the male child are both symbolic substitutes for the desired breast or bottle in the mouth that failed to take place sufficiently in early infancy and childhood. When these methods fail, often the young person turns to alcohol. Sometimes alcohol is used from the beginning. All of these symbolic substitutes for the mother's care are destructive. Beyond these activities, the child who eventually is abandoned by the child mother becomes convinced that she is worthless and not worthy of deep mother love. The child concludes that something must have been wrong with him, her from birth, for the mother to have abandoned him, her. Either the mother released the baby to the care of relatives, the welfare agency, the adoption agency, or foster parents. The child is not able to understand that the mother was too emotionally immature to become a parent. The child only recognizes that when she was given away by the mother, 2, the mother could not provide him her adequate care, or 3, the mother physically abused him, her. The child summarizes it all as, I must not be worth anything. All the substitute care in the world by grandparents and others does not remove this wound and deep-seated doubt about the self that remains with the child for the length of her life, producing a severe distrust of and alienation from others. This is one of the major reasons that many persons enter psychotherapy as adults, primarily with symptoms of depression. Children must enter psychotherapy because of the same problem, but the depression is masked by disturbed patterns of behavior. The emotional and psychological underdevelopment of an entire people can become chronic and permanent once this dynamic affects a sufficient percentage of the population. As I have previously stated, 25% of Black children being born in the U.S. are a part of this cycle of emotional underdevelopment, the basis for functional inferiority. Blacks would be horrified if anyone suggested the outright slaughtering of 25% of Black children. Again, Blacks scream genocide when outspoken white supremacists suggest sterilization of 25% or more of the Black population. Yet, the aforementioned pattern of child parenting, presently widespread in the Black population, achieves exactly the same results. The only difference is that with Black child parents, the Black child's death is more painful and drawn out, a living death. It is a living death in this highly complex society to be left unable to sit still in school and achieve academically because of incorrect socialization. It is a living death for a child to be shifted repeatedly from one foster home to another. It is a living death for a child to walk the streets addicted to drugs or alcohol. It is a living death to be a school dropout. It is a living death to walk the streets as a prostitute. It is a living death to sneak around the street as a thief. It is a living death to suffer the depression of unemployment because you are uneducated and unskilled. It is a living death for a child to be attacked by teachers and others for being bad, meaning their behavior is unsocialized. It is a living death for a child to be confined to a psychiatric hospital. It is a living death to spend a lifetime locked up behind the bars of a juvenile detention center or a prison cell. Depression that results from not having had sufficient, patient, and confident mothering is also a living death. Many of these syndromes of living death lead to forms of actual death, such as suicide, drug overdose, and homicide. More often than not, these deaths are the direct result of children parenting children. All of the above are related directly and indirectly to the dynamic of white supremacy, which necessitates black functional inferiority. However, many of these patterns of living death can be controlled, countered, and combated effectively only if the black community, the entire black collective, is determined to reprogram its individual and collective knowledge, understanding, and behavior toward the total elimination of black child parents. This rethinking will increase the educational and emotional maturity levels of all black parents maximally. First, by elevating the acceptable chronological age of black parents for first births. In this way, black people consciously can start to neutralize the emotional and psychological basis of black functional inferiority that can begin as early emotional deprivation based on parental emotional immaturity. By solving the emotional and psychological basis of black functional inferiority, we will be placing ourselves in the best possible position to solve the socio-political basis of black functional inferiority, racism. By first consciously controlling the emotional and psychological basis of functional inferiority, blacks can begin to consciously and scientifically control and determine the future of the black collective. All age groups in the black population must understand that the most critical factor in the development of a child is the level of emotional maturity achieved by the parents prior to the year of birth of the first child. This level of emotional maturity is proven by the parents' mastery over the external conditions of racism, as expressed through patterns of behavior that are self and group supporting in all areas of people activity. The levels of emotional maturity of the mother and father, coupled with their levels of functional respect for and cooperation with each other, provides the foundation upon which emotional and psychological development occurs in the child. The level of emotional maturity in the mother determines the degree of sustained patience with which she can relate to the infant. The level of emotional maturity achieved by the father prior to the birth of the child determines the level of emotional support he is able to give the mother, so that in the first several years of life she can give high-level emotional support and attention to the child. This support will allow the mother to meet the child's dependency demands completely. Also, it is important that the father is capable of exercising patience with the child and capable of meeting the child's dependency demands. For example, oftentimes a person 14 to 18 years of age has achieved only 3 or fewer years of emotional maturity, particularly in the black population, where there have been many child parents in previous generations and where many single mothers must leave young children in poor care in order to go to work. In the event that the mother is emotionally immature, she will be incapable of meeting the dependency demands of the child. Similarly, if the father is emotionally immature, he will experience the child's dependency demands as an irritation and will find himself competing with the infant child for the mother-wife's attention. These two immature parents often place inordinate demands upon one another, as each is looking to the other to be the idealized mother that she never had. These demands cannot be met, and thus these two child persons end up with extreme frustrations and irritation towards one another. Not only were they unable to provide emotional support for one another at mature levels, but they were unable to provide a basis for the emotional and psychological growth of the new generation. If the parents lack the emotional maturity needed to meet the dependency demands of the newborn child throughout its early years of development, when the child becomes of sufficient age to move outside of the home, she will search the environment for a sense of closeness and human warmth in an attempt to make up for the areas in which the parents failed or were lacking. Soon, similarly emotionally deprived male and female children will find one another. Having long ago discovered their genitals, they will begin to seek physical closeness with one another. They will do this through sex, not for the purpose of creating and caring for new human life, but because it seems to them that they have found the means for satisfying their long-standing hunger for emotional warmth, security, and the desire to be close to another human being. Mother could not give this sense of prolonged closeness, either because she was too immature and impatient or too busy working. Father could not give this sense of closeness because he was too emotionally immature, impatient, tired, or overwhelmed. And grandmother also became too tired and overwhelmed. So, unconsciously, the children seek to gratify this need for warmth through sexual contact with one another. But this does not work because they are emotionally starved children who lack the emotional development, stability, and maturity to remain stable, emotionally supporting partners for one another. Often the resulting pattern is that the teenage male leaves the teenage female in search of another playmate. The girl has a baby. believing that the baby will be something of her own to hold on to be close to. Or she believes that the baby will make the teenage male stay or return. When the baby fails to provide the child mother with a sense of belonging and fails to make the child father stay or return, the unconscious search for dependency, need gratification, and human closeness begins all over again. The result is another pregnancy. The cycle continues. These children who have become parent children are in search of mature, patient, and quiet maternal and paternal love, warmth, and instruction that they have not had from adults. Much of the difficulty adults have in relating to these young persons comes from the anger they have developed towards a whole society and world of disappointing adults who failed to provide them with what they needed as dependent children. A child's need for emotional sustenance from mature adults cannot be satisfied with material purchases and provisions. It must be given directly to the child through mature and patient support and understanding. It must be given to the child consistently over a sufficiently extended period of time, such that the child gradually weans himself or herself from the need for high-level support and need gratification. The ability of parents to provide high-level emotional support for a child cannot be obtained from anyone's crash course designed to prepare the already pregnant teenage mother and father for their new responsibility. These highly complex tasks cannot be prepared for by coursework or book reading alone. These tasks must be learned through the child's own developmental experience over a period of years. It is a sham to allow these teenagers to believe that they can somehow learn to be long-term, effective parents when they are only emotionally immature children. Teenage children who become parents know absolutely nothing about meeting the emotional and developmental needs of a child. They are looking to have their own needs gratified, needs that never were gratified fully when they were infants and small children. It is imperative that all Black persons in leadership positions fully understand the emotional and psychological basis for sustained achievement in individuals. Early dependency need gratification during the first 6 years of life is the essential foundation upon which all other stages of emotional and psychological development are built. All of the well-intentioned demands for excellence in school achievement and performance will be for naught if this critical factor of early dependency need gratification is ignored in early infancy and childhood. A child whose dependency needs have not been gratified is a child who will be unable to learn, even if a school breakfast has been provided on a plastic plate. The large percentages of Black children who attend public schools in urban centers, unprepared to sit quietly and allow the teacher to begin academic instruction, are in many instances the offspring of persons who were teenage children when they attempted to begin parenting. No teacher, no matter how highly motivated, can meet the unmet dependency demands of a classroom 1/4 full of children who have been parented by children. Yet these dependency demands must be met if the children are to pay full attention and learn. Further, it is the exceptional child parent who can help a child with her homework patiently, or encourage that child to be patient, while she learns to read, write, or do mathematics. And it is the rare child parent who is able to sacrifice personal desires in order to attend PTA meetings so that teachers and parents can work together in helping children to learn. The immature child parents will find it far easier to get lost in the fantasies of television, drugs, alcohol, or in the rhythmic beat of rock and roll music, the rock music being used, I am certain, in the attempt to make up for the mother's failure to hold, cuddle, and rock the child in infancy and childhood. Child parents in general are concerned with the normal interest of most children, simply fun and games and parties. Also, child parents who have their own unmet dependency needs often will find themselves too preoccupied with having these needs met through constant sexual activity. They are then useless for meeting the continuing needs of young children. Blacks, as a people, must understand that Black child parenting under the stress of racism is group destructive behavior, and as such it cannot be condoned by the people, it must be controlled. Only older Black persons can parent and instruct Black children towards success under the stress of racism. In other words, correct behavior for Black people attempting to end their oppression under racism is to prevent, by all possible means, children from giving birth to or parenting children. When the Black collective begins to understand that power is directly related not to money, but to correct behavior pattern organization, behavior discipline, and behavior control on the part of the individual and the collective, the Black collective will be well on its way towards a new level of political understanding and maturity. These attempts to evolve correct patterns of behavior under the specific circumstance of racism become the tactics and strategies in all areas of life activity to achieve the ultimate goal of liberation and justice. It is incumbent upon every Black person to begin to see the long and short-range implications of all patterns of behavior in which Black individuals and the collective engage. This recognition is necessary in order to evaluate accurately whether the given pattern of conduct aids or detracts from the goal of Black liberation. If the behavior detracts from the long-range objective, it must be eliminated. If the behavior enhances the achievement of the ultimate goal, it must be reinforced among the people by their own individual willpower. The Black collective must find ways to surround all Black children and young people with sufficient emotional support, warmth, encouragement, and constructive activity. When this is done, they will not have to abuse the act of self-reproduction, and they will mature to the point that they eventually will be able to dignify the birth of every Black child and lead those children toward full development. If Black people wait for grant funds to become available for this to be achieved, all will be lost. We should take it upon ourselves to establish a 5-year plan for the total elimination of Black child parenting, so that by the year 1984 there will be no Black child parents in the U.S. Simultaneously, we should take it upon ourselves as a collective to decrease Black infant mortality and Black maternal illness and death drastically. We cannot say that we respect ourselves until such fundamental objectives have been achieved, as they constitute the basis for developing a future for the collective. We cannot state that we have reached maturity as a people until we are ready, willing, and able to take 100% internal responsibility for achieving our articulated goal of liberation and justice. We cannot teach the children a level of maturity and responsibility that we, as older persons, have failed to achieve.